What if Ned Stark never truly died, and instead returned with ice in his veins and vengeance in his heart? Westeros wouldn't face a war. It would face extinction under a familiar face. The snow whispered secrets only the dead could hear. It wasn't just cold anymore, it was ancient. Beyond the wall, beyond the myths, something had shifted. Something familiar. Jon Snow stood at the edge of Castle Black, hands clenched tight around the railing, his breath steaming in the frozen air. Ghost growled low beside him, not at anything he could see, but at something deep in the wind itself. Bran had told him strange things, of visions, broken timelines, paths that bent and snapped like brittle branches. But Jon had never believed that he could be wrong. Until tonight. 3 days ago, a scouting party disappeared without a trace. 24 of the Night's Watch experienced rangers gone. No screams, no blood, no warning, just vanished. And now the wind carried something else, not death. Not exactly. Something colder. Tormund was the first to speak it. I saw him, Snow. I swear by the old gods and the new. His voice cracked. The wildling had fought giants, walked through fire, faced White Walkers, but his hands were shaking. He was alive, no, not alive, but walking, moving, staring right at me. Jon narrowed his eyes. Who? Tormund looked him dead in the eye. Eddard Stark. Jon's heart stopped. Just for a second. That name had been buried in memory, stone and snow, sorrow and silence. He had watched his father's head roll in King's Landing. He had mourned him 1,000 times in 1,000 ways. Ned Stark was gone. He had to be gone. But Bran's words came back like thunder across snow. Time is not a line, Jon, it's a wheel made of glass. It cracks, sometimes it breaks. Jon didn't sleep that night, nor the next. And when the wind changed direction, when the dead began to march south again, he saw it, with his own eyes, standing at the front of the army of... The dead wasn't the Night King. It was Ned Stark. His hair was white as bone, his face pale and carved from frost, but his eyes weren't empty like the rest. They weren't blue. They were dark, deep, and full of pain, of memory, of purpose. He wasn't just another white. He was something else, something worse. Jon ordered every raven sent, Winterfell, Dragonstone, even to Cersei, the monster queen of the south. He's returned, the letters read. But he's not the man we knew. Ned Stark leads the army of the dead. The North didn't believe it. Sansa refused to accept it. Her trick, she whispered, pacing the halls of Winterfell, eyes wild. It's a trick. It has to be. Arya stayed quiet, too quiet. Tyrion just drank more than usual, but Bran didn't flinch. He only said this time he came back with a choice. And he chose the only side that could end all sides. The battles that followed didn't look like wars. They looked like mercy killings. Ned Stark didn't slaughter. He liberated. Villages that had long suffered from Lannister oppression, silenced in moments but not torn apart. No blood, no screams, just stillness, cold and silent peace. Those who were taken didn't resist. Their eyes closed. They stopped shivering, and then they walked again quietly behind the man who once preached honor. He didn't ride dragons. He didn't burn castles. He simply walked, and everything in his path gave way. Jon rode out alone to face him, not because he wanted to fight, because he needed to know. So if there was a sliver of his father left, if the man who raised him, the man who told him, tales of honor by the firelight, was still there beneath the frost and silence, he found him just beyond the weirwood, tree north of the wall. The red leaves had turned black from cold. The heart tree didn't bleed anymore. Jon dismounted slowly, sword sheathed, hands open. The army of the dead didn't move. They stood still like statues of ice. And in the middle stood Ned, cloaked in silence, no sword, no crown. Jon's voice broke as he spoke. Is it really you? Ned's head tilted slightly. There was no smile, no warmth, but his voice? Yes. Jon took a step forward. Ghost didn't growl. He whimpered, lowered his head. How? Jon whispered. Ned looked up toward the black sky where no stars dared shine. I was given a choice. To rest in or to return, to let the cycle of war devour our children or end it. Truly end it. And you chose this. Jon's fists clenched. This curse? I chose peace, Ned replied. Jon shook his head, voice rising. By turning people into corpses? No, Ned said softly. By turning them into silence. No more kings. No more thrones. No more wars fought over names and lies. Jon looked around at the still frozen faces. That's not peace, he spat. That's oblivion, perhaps, Ned said. But it's the only kind men never destroy. And then from the army behind him, a single figure stepped forward. Catelyn Stark. Her eyes weren't blue either. They were red. Like tears frozen in time, Jon's breath caught in his throat. Then he saw Robb, then Rickon, then Benjen. All of them. Every Stark that had bled for the realm. Every Stark that had died trying to do the right thing. The Night King had fallen, killed by Arya's blade. But the power he carried didn't die. It waited. And when the right soul came, one strong enough to carry its weight but noble enough to change its purpose, it returned. It chose Ned Stark, because who else could end the world without vengeance? Jon dropped to his knees. Not in surrender, in grief. You taught me better than this, he whispered. So you taught me to fight for the living? I did, Ned said. And I am, but not in the way you hoped. Jon rose, trembling. I won't let you do this. And for the first time, Ned looked almost sad. You never could stop me when you were a boy, he said. And you won't stop me now. The wind howled through the trees, and the dead began to move again, slowly, silently, toward the wall, toward Winterfell, toward the end. And Jon, sword in hand, found himself asking a question he never imagined. If stopping your father meant saving the world, could you do it? Father meant saving the world. Could you do it? Jon didn't sleep after that encounter. He couldn't. The image of Ned Stark's face, his father's face, etched in frost and sorrow, haunted every moment he closed his eyes. It wasn't just that Ned had returned. It was that he had returned changed. No anger, no cruelty, just absolute calm, unbreakable conviction, as if death had purified his sense of justice into something colder than any law Jon had ever known. He rode back to Castle Black in silence. Ghost limped behind him, eyes hollow, tail low. The wind bit harder now, not because of weather, but because the wall itself seemed to be groaning, whispering, afraid. Magic older than the first men had held it together. But that magic had never faced a Stark who carried the Night King's legacy inside his blood. The wall would not hold. When he arrived, the brothers of the Night's Watch were waiting, torches flickering in the wind, eyes dark and full of questions. Tormund stepped forward. Well, was it him? Jon just nodded. And? Tormund pushed, anxious. Did he speak? Is there anything left of him? Jon dismounted slowly. His voice cracked. He remembers everything. Sam stepped from the crowd, pushing his glasses up, voice timid. Then maybe we can reach him. No, Jon said, sharper than he meant. He doesn't want to be reached. He thinks this is mercy. He thinks ending us all will save us. Silence fell across the courtyard. He wants peace, Jon continued. Not by ruling, not by burning cities like Daenerys. He wants it by erasing everything. Thrones, borders, houses, bloodlines, it all ends. You mean he wants to kill everyone? One of the younger brothers asked, horrified. Jon looked up, eyes haunted. Not kill, convert, and they don't resist. They follow. Like it's a blessing. The implications struck them all. This wasn't war. This was a cause, and people were joining him. Over the next few days, ravens brought grim news. In the north, small villages had surrendered without a fight. Entire towns opened their gates when the army of the dead arrived. They didn't scream. They didn't flee. They knelt. And when the march continued, they joined the march, eyes dim but peaceful. No fire. No bloodshed. Just silence. The north was falling, not to force but to belief. Sansa stood in the great hall of Winterfell, staring at the reports, her knuckles white. He's turning them. Brienne stood beside her, armored, face pale. It doesn't make sense. Why aren't they fighting back? Because it's Ned Stark, Sansa whispered. They trust him, even now. Even like this. Arya paced behind them, teeth gritted. Then we kill him, Brienne turned. You'd kill your father? Arya didn't flinch. He's not our father anymore. He left that behind. He's something else now. Sansa looked at her younger sister. Are you sure you could do it? Arya's eyes flared. I killed the Night King. I can kill whatever wears my father's face. But deep inside, none of them truly believed that. Because Ned Stark had never been cruel. He had never lied. He had died protecting his family and the realm. And now he was returning, not with fire, but with purpose. He wasn't destroying Westeros, he was healing it. One corpse at a time. Bran sat alone beneath the heart tree in Winterfell, his eyes blank as crows circled above. He saw it all. He felt it all. The march of quiet boots on snow, the whispers in the wind, the pull of ancient forces moving beneath the ice. And something else, a choice coming, a moment where the world could either become silent and still, or be ripped apart once more in flame and steel. Jon arrived 3 days later, winded and worn, his eyes sunken but his will stronger than ever. He met Sansa and Arya in the council chamber. Gendry was there. So was Davos. Sam had arrived carrying old books and scrolls, desperate to find a solution that didn't involve killing a legend. "We don't have time," Arya snapped. "He's days from the wall. Once he crosses, it's over." Davos frowned. "Can the wall even hold him?" Jon looked up. "No, the wall was built to stop monsters. Not Starks." Sam spread the scrolls. "There's something here. An old passage. It speaks of the frozen crown, a source of power in the north, older than even the children. It was sealed, buried in ice. But if he's found it, and fused with what the Night King left behind, he's not just leading the dead," Jon muttered. "He's something new." Sansa turned to Jon. "What do you want to do?" Jon didn't answer immediately. His eyes found the window, the snow falling heavier now, the wind louder. "I want to save him," he said softly. Arya exploded. "Save him? You saw him. He's gone." "No," Jon said. "He remembers. He hurts. He believes in what he's doing. He thinks this is the only way. Then he's insane." "No," Bran interrupted, his voice hollow. "He's logical. Too logical. That's what makes him dangerous." Sansa leaned forward. "Then what?" "We negotiate?" Jon shook his head. "He's not listening to words. He won't stop unless I prove there's another way." Gendry stepped forward. "You mean fight him?" Jon's silence was answer enough. Sam looked horrified. "Jon, you're talking about killing Ned Stark, the man who raised you. I'm talking about saving him. From himself." That night Jon stood outside Winterfell's gates, the northern winds howling around him. He looked out over the dark forests beyond the wall and whispered a prayer to gods old and new. Let there be another way. Because deep down, even Jon didn't know if he had the strength to strike down the only father he'd ever known. The next morning the wall fell. It didn't explode. It didn't crumble. It melted, quietly, as if surrendering. Ned Stark walked through the ruins, leading an army of the dead. But these weren't mindless corpses. These were followers, quiet, calm, devoted. In the center of the north, the last great battle wasn't going to be waged with fire and sword. It was going to be fought in the hearts of the living. Would they resist a man they once called Father, Lord Savior? Or would they kneel, not in fear, but in peace? And would Jon Snow, son of Rhaegar, raised by Ned, bearer of flame and blood, be the one to choose? Or to fall? Blood be the one to choose? Or to fall? The fields north of Winterfell were covered in an unnatural stillness. Not just quiet, but a silence that pressed into the bones. Snow didn't fall like it used to. It drifted downward like ash. And the wind no longer howled, it whispered. Jon stood on the battlements, eyes locked on the horizon. He could see them now. Shadows in the white, hundreds, thousands, the dead, marching in perfect unity. No rage, no chaos, just purpose. A quiet storm that moved without resistance. Like they belonged there. Like they had always belonged. He turned slowly as Sansa approached. She was wrapped in fur, but it did nothing against the chill in her voice. "They're less than a day away." Jon nodded once. "And you still don't have a plan?" His jaw tightened. "I have a plan." "You mean your suicide mission?" she snapped. "You think you can walk into that, whatever that is, and convince him to stop?" "I have to try." She stepped closer, voice low. "He is not your father anymore." Jon looked her in the eye. "Then what is he?" Sansa hesitated. "He's an idea now." "And ideas don't bleed." Jon didn't respond. There was no point. She wasn't wrong. But she also didn't understand. She hadn't been raised by him. She hadn't sat by the fire while Ned told stories of honor and sacrifice. Jon had lived by his example, loved him, mourned him, and now that same man marched against the realm. Some part of Jon still refused to believe he was beyond saving. That night, Jon slipped from the castle alone. Only Ghost followed, silent as the snow. Arya tried to stop him, appearing from the shadows like a breath of wind, blade glinting. You think I'd let you go without saying goodbye? Jon sighed. You can't come with me. I'm not asking. Jon stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. If I fail, they'll need you. Sansa will need you. The North will need you. Arya's voice dropped. What if I need you? He didn't answer, just pulled her into a rough hug. If I don't come back... She stepped back. Then I'll kill him myself. He smiled at that. Not because it was funny, but because it was Arya. Fierce, unwavering. And then he was gone. He followed the trail of frost, the unnatural stillness, until it wasn't snow crunching beneath his boots. It was silence. The kind of silence that made the world feel paused. He saw them from a hill, a sea of the dead stretching into the trees. But it was the front line that froze him in place. Robb Stark, the young wolf, his half-brother. Crowned and killed. He stood there, not rotting, not lifeless, preserved, cold, noble, and beside him, Catelyn Stark. Her eyes, once wild with grief, were now soft with frozen calm. Even Rickon stood there, tiny, expressionless. It was a graveyard-turned family reunion, and at the center, facing a frozen weirwood tree, was Ned Stark. He looked the same as before. Not monstrous. Not a wight, just still, like a statue carved by ice and memory. Jon stepped into the clearing. The army of the dead didn't move. I thought you'd come, Ned said, voice quiet. You left me no choice. Ned turned slowly. His face was pale, but his eyes weren't empty. They were heavy, weighted, as if he carried every death in the world inside them. I didn't come to destroy, Ned said. I came to end it. Once and for all. You're ending life. I'm ending war, Jon's fists clenched. By killing choice. Ned looked past him into the trees. Every throne breeds war. Every banner sows division. As long as we live in kingdoms, we will die in conflict. That's not your call to make. Ned met his eyes. Then whose is it? The dragons? The kings? The liars in red robes? Jon stepped forward. Mine. For the first time, Ned's face changed. Not with anger. Not with fear. But with sorrow. I didn't want this for you, Jon. Jon blinked. What do you mean? I wanted you to grow up safe. That's why I lied. Why I called you my son. Why I took your mother's name to the grave. So you'd never have to choose between love and duty. Jon's breath caught. You knew, he whispered. I always knew, Ned said. And so did you. In your blood. In your dreams. You were never mine. But I loved you as if you were. The snow didn't fall. It hung in the air like suspended grief. Then help me stop this, Jon begged. Don't let it end like this. Ned looked down. I've already gone too far. No, Jon said, voice breaking. There's always a way back. And then from behind another voice, cold, hollow, ancient, there isn't. Jon turned and saw Bran, not the boy he once knew, not even the three-eyed raven, something else. He wasn't walking. He was floating, his eyes pure white, mouth unmoving. The ground beneath him froze. Jon stumbled back. What? What is this? Ned stepped aside. Bran spoke, voice layered with echoes. We gave him a choice, death or transformation. He chose the burden. But there is no return. Not from this path. You turned him into this? Jon shouted. No, Bran replied. He turned himself. We only opened the door. Jon reached for his sword. Then I'll close it. But he couldn't move. The cold gripped his limbs. Not pain, not ice. Just weight. As if grief itself had frozen him. You cannot kill him, Bran said. Not because he's stronger, but because you still love him. Jon trembled. Then I'll die trying. A pause. Then Ned whispered, and I'll carry that sorrow too. The clearing brightened. Not with sun, but with something older. A blinding white light poured from the weirwood tree. Faces carved in its bark began to weep. Not sap, not blood. Ice Jon's sword glowed. Not with fire, with memory. He raised it, barely. But the ground beneath him cracked, and he realized something terrifying. He wasn't meant to win. He was meant to choose. Behind him, the living waited, Winterfell armed and ready. Before him, the dead, silent, peaceful, unwavering. If he struck now, he might kill Ned. But would it end the war? Or would it start something worse? Jon lowered his blade. I won't fight you. Ned stepped forward. Then kneel. Jon's eyes flickered. The world held its breath. Jon didn't kneel. His knees locked, not from defiance, but from the weight of the moment pressing down on him. His sword, still in his hand, trembled, humming faintly with power and memory. The kind of power that came from bloodlines, from sacrifice, from fire and ice bound together by fate. Ned watched him quietly, his expression unreadable. He didn't move closer, didn't raise a hand. He simply stood in front of his son, the man he once raised and now had come to confront. "You don't have to fight me," Ned said again, voice level. "But you do have to choose, join me or stand against me." Jon's voice cracked. "You're asking me to betray everything you taught me." "I'm asking you to end what I couldn't," Ned replied. "I believed in the law, in justice, in honor, but they were illusions, Jon. They served kings, not the people." Jon shook his head. "You believed in choice, in mercy." "I believed in the possibility of peace," Ned said. "But peace never came. Not with Robert. Not with the Targaryens. Not with the Starks. Even the dragons couldn't stop the blood from flowing. Because you weren't meant to kill choice," Jon growled. "You were meant to protect it." For a long time, neither spoke, and then a sound shattered the stillness. A horn. Distant. Low. Rolling across the frost like thunder. Jon turned. From the south, shapes began to appear. Distant at first, but unmistakable. Riders, soldiers, banners of the north, the Vale, and even Dragonstone, men and women on horseback. Archers on foot, catapults rumbling over frozen earth. The living had come, Winterfell's forces. Sansa had sent them. Jon's eyes widened. No, Ned's face changed slightly. A flicker of something, regret, sadness. "They've made their choice," he said quietly. Jon stepped forward. "Then give me the chance to stop this. Let me speak to them. Let me send them back." "You know they won't leave," Ned replied. "But they'll die," Jon snapped. "No," Ned said. "They'll join." And suddenly the air behind Ned shimmered. Figures emerged from the mist, silent. Cold waiting, Robb Stark stepped forward. Eyes locked on Jon, then Catelyn, Rickon, even Hodor. But something was wrong. They weren't angry. They weren't hollow. They looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Like death had wrapped them in a blanket of false comfort and taken away their pain. Jon's heart raced. He looked back at the arriving armies. Men who would ride into this without knowing what waited for them. Sansa leading them into a trap. He had to stop this. "Give me time," he begged, but it wasn't Ned who answered. It was Bran, floating now, his body untouched by snow or dirt, eyes blazing with white. "There is no time." The dead began to move, not to attack, to meet them, to welcome them. Jon turned and ran, through the frozen woods, past the still trees and whispering winds, toward the living. Toward the only people left who didn't know they were walking into their own salvation or their end. When he reached the edge of the army, the first person he saw was Arya. Blade drawn. Eyes locked on the white mist ahead, she didn't hesitate. "Is it him?" Jon nodded. "He's coming." And he's not alone. Sansa rode up next, flanked by Brienne and Gendry. "Where's the rest of your scouting party?" "There is no scouting party," Jon snapped. "You need to turn them around." "All of them," Sansa frowned. "We're here to fight." "You can't fight this, we have to," Jon grabbed her reins. "He doesn't want war. He wants surrender. And he's not going to kill you. He's going to—" "Take you," Arya stepped forward. "Then we kill him." "You can't," Jon said. "I've done it before." "No," Jon said, voice trembling. "You killed the Night King. This is something else. This is someone who knows us. Someone we loved," Arya's voice dropped. "That's exactly why we have to stop him." The army stopped moving. Across the field, in perfect formation, the dead stood, silent, waiting. Snow drifted between them like falling feathers. Ned stepped forward, alone. No sword. No armor, no shield, only his presence, and the world went still. Sansa's horse snorted nervously. Arya's grip on her blade tightened. Gendry reached for a hammer he hoped he wouldn't have to use. Jon walked out to meet him. The armies watched, living and dead. 2 men, one dead, one half alive, meeting again in the place where history broke. Jon spoke first. "They won't surrender." "I know, then stop. I can't." "Why?" Ned looked over Jon's shoulder at the mass of soldiers. "Because they will never know peace. Not truly. Not while they're free to choose war. You're going to strip them of their humanity. I'm going to strip them of their pain," Jon's voice broke. "That pain is what makes us human." Ned blinked. Then perhaps it's time to be something better. A long silence followed, until the first snowflake fell, but it wasn't white. It was red. Arya's arrow had missed. By design, it landed in the snow beside Ned's foot, silent and harmless. But it was a warning. From the hill behind the army, Arya lowered her bow. Next time, she wouldn't miss. Jon turned back, and then he heard it. A scream. From the back of the living army. The mist had reached them, and the dead were among them. Not fighting. Touching. And with every touch, another soldier's eyes went glassy. Another body stopped breathing. Another life surrendered, and they joined. Sansa shouted orders. Brienne charged. Chaos erupted. Jon turned back to Ned. Call them off. I can't. Then you leave me no choice. And Jon drew Longclaw. Its blade gleamed in the half-light. The sword of the North. The steel of the living. Ned stepped forward. Not to attack, to accept. Jon swung, and everything shattered. Not the blade, not the man, but reality. The ground cracked. The air warped. A flash of light, brighter than fire, colder than death. Jon collapsed, his sword flying from his hand. And from the trees, Bran emerged, eyes empty. Hands glowing. Voice ancient, it begins now. Voice ancient, it begins now. Jon woke with blood in his mouth and ice beneath his back. But there was no pain, only stillness. The forest around him had gone quiet again. Not the natural kind of quiet, but something heavier. Like the world was waiting, watching. His breath rose slow in the air, steam vanishing almost as soon as it appeared. He sat up, heart pounding, Longclaw gone. He was alone, no army. No Arya, no Ned, no Bran, just silence and the sense that time itself had taken a step back. Then, movement. Not footsteps, not horses, just shifting, the trees. They bent ever so slightly, as if bowing. And then he heard the voice, not aloud, not from any one direction, inside him. Now you understand, it was Bran, but not the brother he remembered, not the soft-voiced boy who'd fallen from a tower. This was something else, something vast, like listening to the wind and realizing it had been whispering your name all along. Jon stood slowly, fists clenched. Where are they? Where's the army? Gone, for now. You're in between. In between what? Choice. The word hit him harder than steel. He looked around again, trying to find something, someone, anything to ground himself. But there was nothing. Only frost, silence, and the unrelenting truth that something bigger was happening now. You did this to him, Jon said. To Ned. No, Bran's voice was calm. Terrifyingly calm. He did it to himself. We gave him the sight. The truth. And he made his choice. Just like you're about to. I didn't ask for this, no one ever does. But you're still here, and that means something. Jon turned in place, desperate. Let me go back. I need to stop this. They're dying. No, Bran whispered. They're surrendering. Jon's hands shook. It's not surrender. It's death. It's peace. No, it's control. He's taking away who they are. So did every king who ever lived. The accusation hung there, heavy and sharp. Jon froze. Bran's voice softened. You've seen it. Targaryens burning cities. Lannisters breaking oaths. Even Starks making choices that cost lives. Why keep fighting for a world that refuses to change? Because people still matter. People suffer. They feel. They choose. They love. That's worth the pain. Bran didn't speak again, but something changed. A low rumble rolled through the ground beneath him. Jon turned. Through the trees. A shape emerged. No army, just one man. Ned's sword sheathed, hands empty. Eyes fixed on Jon. He looked older now. Not from age, but from burden. Death had taken away his warmth, but not his weight. Jon spoke first. Is this real? Yes, then why bring me here? To see if you're ready. Ready for what? To decide whether you end this. Or become part of it. Jon stepped forward. I won't help you. Ned's eyes narrowed. Even if it ends the war? Jon's jaw tightened. At what cost? Yourself, Ned said. Only you, Jon laughed bitterly. So that's the plan. Take me and leave everyone else alone? No, Ned said. Take you. And they follow. Jon shook his head. They won't. They will, Ned said simply. Because they love you. Because they trust you. Because if you choose peace, they'll believe peace is possible. Jon's heart thundered. You're using me. I'm offering you purpose. Jon stepped closer. I already had purpose. Fighting for the living. And how did that go? Ned asked. How many died for that fight? How many were betrayed? How many queens burned cities for their own glory, while you stood there holding your honor like a sword that couldn't cut anything? Jon froze, because it was true, because deep down he remembered the way Daenerys' eyes burned, the way Tyrion begged him, the way his own hand trembled before plunging that blade into her heart. And what came next? More death, more war, more thrones. You think you can erase all that? Jon asked. I already have, Ned said. And suddenly the world around them shimmered. Jon blinked. Winterfell stood before him, but different, empty, peaceful, no guards, no banners, no steel. Children played in the courtyard. Farmers walked without fear. No kings, no thrones, just people. And in the center a tree taller than the godswood, glowing faintly, pulsing with some quiet life. This is the future, Ned said. No rulers, no wars, just stillness. Jon's eyes narrowed. No fire, no passion, no freedom, no suffering, no choice. Ned turned to him. You've seen what the world becomes when men are free. Fire and blood, every time, Jon whispered. Then we try harder. We build better. We don't just erase the world because it's broken. Ned looked down. You sound like me. When I still had hope. Jon took a step forward. Then remember what that felt like. For a moment, silence, and then Bran appeared again, not walking, not speaking, just being, eyes glowing, arms outstretched. It's time. Jon looked between them. His brother, his father. Both twisted by something older than time, something they believed was salvation. But Jon had seen salvation before, and it always came with a body count. He took a breath and said the words that shattered the stillness. No. And the world broke, the ground exploded upward. The sky cracked. Bran vanished like smoke. Ned stumbled back. Jon surged forward. His sword returned to his hand in a blaze of white, and fire lit the frost. And fire lit the frost. Fire roared from Jon's blade, cutting through the frozen air like a scream that had waited centuries to be heard. It wasn't the orange flame of dragonfire or wildfire. It burned white. Pure, it didn't consume. It revealed. And in that light everything changed. The fake peace, the illusion of stillness, the vision of Winterfell without war, it cracked. Like glass, the children playing vanished. The glowing tree withered into ash. The silence died, and in its place came a wind not of winter, but of truth. Ned stood across from him, stunned, eyes wide, not with fear, but recognition. That sword, he said softly. Jon's grip tightened around the hilt of Longclaw, now alive with light and heat. This blade was forged for the living. Ned stepped back. No, it was forged for war. Then I'll use it to end this one. The right way. Ned's voice grew harder. You'd rather see the world burn again than accept a new peace? I'd rather bleed for a future where people choose their own fate, Jon growled. Not be frozen into a lie, and the moment shattered. Bran returned, not as a boy, not even as the three-eyed raven. He was pure white now. No legs, no face. Just glowing form and hollow voice. Then you must kill him. Jon stared at Bran. You mean my father? He is not your father anymore. He is what stands between the world and its silence. Jon turned back to Ned, but Ned was gone, and in his place stood something larger. The frost cracked beneath armored boots as the figure took shape. It wore Ned Stark's face, but taller, colder, crowned in broken ice, eyes no longer dark but burning blue-white. The final transformation, the Peacekeeper. He wasn't leading the dead anymore. He was the last wall between life and stillness. Jon raised his sword. So did the Peacekeeper, and the world held its breath. They clashed. Fire met frost. Blade against blade. Steel against silence. The impact shattered trees and ripped the ground open. Fire surged up through the cracks. Snow melted in violent waves. Every strike between them echoed like thunder across the world. Atop Winterfell, Sansa felt it. Arya clutched her blade. Sam looked to the sky. The war had begun and ended far away, between only two souls who carried the weight of it. All Jon fought with fury, but not hate. The Peacekeeper fought with precision, but not rage. Neither wanted to destroy the other, but both knew only one could remain. You were supposed to protect us. Jon roared, striking again. I am protecting you, the Peacekeeper shouted back. From yourselves. They locked swords. Ice and fire hissed between them. The ground shook beneath their feet. Jon pushed forward. You don't protect people by taking away who they are. I gave them peace. The Peacekeeper screamed. No more kings. No more hunger. No more pain, and no more love, John spat. The peacekeeper faltered, just slightly. The blow landed deep. You think love is worth the war it brings? The voice cracked. It's the only thing that makes the war matter. John's blade ignited, brighter than before. The light pierced the peacekeeper's chest, but he didn't fall. He looked John in the eye and whispered, "I'm sorry," and then he dropped his sword. The frost retreated. The mist faded. The dead around the world, those who had followed, surrendered, become part of the quiet, stopped moving. John caught him as he fell. Ned Stark. Not the peacekeeper, not a god, just a man. His eyes were no longer blue, no longer cold, just tired. "I wanted to fix it," he breathed. John held him tight. "You tried," Ned coughed once. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You were always the better man." Then his body turned to snow in John's arms, and the forest was still but not dead, not silent, alive again. The wind blew softly. The trees groaned, not from pain but relief, and far away at the wall, the dead collapsed where they stood. The war was over, but not the world. John stood alone in the clearing, surrounded by fallen frost and fading magic. The sword in his hand dimmed. He looked up to the sky, and for the first time in years, it rained. Soft, warm, cleansing. Back at Winterfell, Arya stood atop the gate as the mist vanished. The dead crumbled. Sansa wept silently as the armies stood stunned. "What happened?" Brienne asked. Arya didn't blink. "He ended it." John returned days later. No fanfare, no ceremony. Just a man walking into his home, older than before, quieter. He stood in front of Sansa. "It's done," he said. She nodded. "Is he gone?" "Yes." Sansa looked away. "Was it really him? Until the end?" John nodded slowly. "Yes, even when he changed. He never stopped believing he was doing what was right." Arya stepped in. "And what about you?" John looked at her. "I didn't win," Arya frowned. "You stopped him." "No," John whispered. He stopped himself. "I just reminded him who he was." And in the days that followed, the world began again. The wall stood tall, reforged with fire and memory. The North buried its dead and honored them, not for their victories, but for the choices they made. Bran disappeared. Some said he became the wind itself. Others believed he was watching, waiting, guarding. But John never looked for him. He stayed in the North, not as a king, not as a savior, just as a man who remembered. And when children asked him one day what happened when the dead marched not to kill, but to heal, he would sit by the fire and say, "There was a man who loved peace so much. He was willing to become death to give it to us." And sometimes, when the snow fell just right, they swore they could see a figure at the edge of the trees, watching, not threatening, not judging, just standing and remembering. The man who tried to end all wars, and the son who reminded him that some fights are worth the pain. The end.